Welcome to the Revolution Church podcast.
There we go. I like to see what Josh always does at the beginning with the edit when he decides to bring it in.
Oh, yeah.
So Josh has been doing our video, putting up the YouTube videos, everyone. Good morning. He has a video game show channel thing that he puts up. And we watch him play video games.
On
Twitch. On Twitch, but you can pay money to scare him while he's playing video games. And it is awesome. And I was thinking that maybe we should, and it makes a really loud noise, or it does something. And I was thinking that would be a great fundraiser for Revolution, is that people could just make really loud noises when I'm speaking. Well, good morning, everyone.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Welcome to the evolution, the revolution. Live and direct on Facebook. So as soon as we get enough followers, I think we're going to start going full time on YouTube. So we might make the move the sanctuary.
Yeah. We'll still be able to cast that onto Facebook though. So.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to sunny Seattle. It's a beautiful day out today.
It is. It's been gorgeous.
It looks like you have a cast on there. Did you hurt yourself?
No, I do not have a cast.
Oh, no. Okay. Yeah, so life is still unchanging, which has been okay, I guess. Change is always weird as well, but been, very busy, very crazy, and very dadding, lots of dadding, and trying to find fun, interesting things to do as I dad, and that's fun. So tomorrow, I will be getting, not tomorrow, today after the service, I'm getting that shot, the vaccination. A little bit nervous about it, not gonna lie. Also, like if you're Generation X and you grew up in the 90s, you like got a lot of rage against the machine in you, and so when you think government and big pharmaceutical, and then you think, they do what they told ya, and you do what they told ya. You're like, I'm supposed to be raging against the machine, but this is the right thing to do. I don't know what, oh my God. So I'm just going to go get it done because I have little children. So there you go. Going to get a shot and hopefully not be sick for the next few days.
Hopefully.
So I was supposed to be flying to Belfast, Northern Ireland tomorrow, and I'm not, because the UK has said that I'm too dangerous to be there.
Too dangerous.
Yeah, they said my speaking is too dangerous and I could upset people in Belfast.
Yeah.
So I won't be flying out there. Well, no one can actually fly out there. But yeah, that would be cool to go, but I'm not going to be able to go. But that's what I want to talk to you guys about a little bit, is last week was pretty amazing. We had a big crowd last week, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
live crowd. And Pete Rollins spoke last week in impurity culture, and it was great. I thought it was fantastic. I was actually tempted to just replay it today and just be like, you guys need to watch this again, because I felt like it was so good. I mean, honestly, listening to it, I was like, man, I could still at least 3 sermons from this talk. But it was really good, and I felt like it was healthy, and it was one of those things where I really would like people to hear it. I tried to get more folks to listen when I went online on Twitter and stuff like that, trying to guilt people into listening more. And that's also your job. Guilt some people into listening to Pete's talk, because I think it's productive. I think it's healthy. I think it allows us to look not at just the problems around us, but also at ourselves and how we play into those issues and those problems.
Totally.
And so I think it's really, 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 really an important talk for people to share and for people to hear. And I would almost go as far as saying it was probably the best talk I've ever we've ever had at Revolution. I just really was blown away by it.
That was great.
He is so good. So I loved Pete's talk. So if you guys get a chance to share that talk even more, retweet it or re-Facebook it, put it on your Facebook page, let people know about it, I would appreciate it. I'm not asking you to promote me, I'm just asking you to promote it. You can even go to his, I think he put it up on his own site, so you can go to his YouTube and get it there as well and take off all our branding and put it up. I don't care. I just think the work that Pete's doing is very important. I think it might be more important than even he realizes. And it's just so timely for where we're at right now. And it goes to a depth that my education does not allow me to get down into. And so I just was really grateful to have that here. And I think it's something that could help us all be better people.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm always striving for, is to, how can we be better people? How can we help each other? How can we look at ourselves? How can we grow? You know? And I think that kind of message leads to community, better community.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was so into it, is because I want to see better community in the country, in the world, and in the church, and not the church, whatever. I just think it was great. So please share that with folks. That being said, what I also wanted to talk about is next weekend, I believe it's the 21st through the 23rd, Pete is doing Wake live from Belfast. That's why I was supposed to be going to Belfast tomorrow, but the UK didn't open up to the States yet. Because I was going to do some of his interviewing him and speaking, but I wasn't able to do it. But it's going to be all live. I think it's 9 hours of stuff. We have the link right there. Revolution Church just popped up to that event in the comments section. And that would be another thing that I would ask you guys to share with your friends and your neighbors and your family. It's really, really an incredible time. I attended Wake the last time they had it before COVID, so I guess that was 2 years ago. And so I was just coming out of my divorce and suicide and electric shock therapy, and I was in a really, really dark place. And going to Wake really, one, allowed me to kind of mourn, which is the idea of a wake, but also allowed me to reminded me of what I'm called to do, reminded me of why I do the work I do, and also allowed me to see other issues that are going on in the world and deeper issues. And honestly, one of the reasons I've decided to do a 10-year study on Hegel was because of Wake. And because I read a book from an author, Todd McGowan, who was a speaker at Wake, and it was really just amazing. It was an amazing time. Unfortunately, everybody won't be able to hang out and go to pubs because it's online, but the information, the speakers, even the entertainment is just all really incredible. And so if you really want 9 hours of footage, 9 hours of something that can change your life and be a part of something that's really amazing, even to just see if that be something maybe you'd interested in attending it, going to in person next year, I think it's worth it. Like, if you have a church or you work for a church and your church pays for things like that, get your church to pay for it. But really, I want to encourage you guys, sign up for Wake. It's going to be incredible. And Pete puts together just a first-class group of people and brings really a lot of great information and helps us think, and helps us think well, and helps us grow. And I think it's well worth the money. I think it's like $55 for 9 hours. And if find a friend and go in on it together and watch it together, and you don't have to watch it at live, you can watch it later and all that stuff. So it's really cool. I'm not getting any money for it. I'm just pushing it because I believe in Pete's work. And if you love Revolution and you like what's happening at Revolution, I will say he's been a huge influence on my work, especially the past 2 years. So it's just a chance to go deeper into the things that we're talking about and we study every week. And you get to see like Barry's going to be there, and he's amazing. God, they got so many great speakers and musicians and artists this year. It's just really cool. So
Awesome.
do it, check it out, and share it with your friends. Let people know about it because it's going to be great. So that's Wake, and we've got the link here, so you can go right there.
It's pinned.
It's pinned at the top. So get y'all tickets, yo, and go.
Do it.
So today I want to talk a little bit about weakness. Yes, weakness. You know, the idea of when we are victims or when we're weak or when we're going through rough times, maybe another good word for it would be brittle spirits. You know, when we have kind of a brittle spirit, when we're feeling brittle, when we're feeling weak, when we're feeling like we can't go on, when we're feeling victimized, hurt. I think maybe hurt is a good word for this as well. I want to look a little bit at that today and what we do with that. So I'm going to go into 1 Thessalonians, and so this is where we're going to start. I've got a few different things to share with you guys today, but how does the Christianity deal with weakness, and what does it say about weakness? And you know, I'm always curious of like, do we really want to subscribe to Christianity? And I think that's a good question to ask yourself. You know, is this really a religion I want to subscribe to? You know, or do I just think Jesus was a cool guy? Or, you know, because there's so much bullshit that also comes along with it, which we're going to talk about as well. But what is some of the books in the Bible say about weakness? 1 Thessalonians 5:14. Sorry, I questioned myself today. I'm going to make a change in my notes. And when I question myself, no one should question me, not even myself. Okay, 5:14. And we urge you, well, I was talking about resurrection. Hallelujah. 5:14 says, and we urge you, beloved, to admonish the idea of encouraging the faint-hearted, help the weak, be patient with all of them. See that none of you repay evil for evil, but always seek to do good to one another and to all. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. So what I want to look at here is this idea of, and I urge you to, beloved, to admonish the ideas. That is such a weird word, ideas. But he's saying, encourage the faint of the heart, help the weak, and be patient with all of them. So that's the idea, is are we being patient with the weak? Are we encouraging each other when we go through this kind of stuff? Now, here's the idea, is what is the weak? Who are the weak? And so in my early years, I would look at this idea of encouraging the weak and how we are patient with people who are weak. Was often I would see legalistic people as weak folks, because I would always sometimes feel like the people who needed a lot of boundaries were often fearful of questions, fearful of doubt, and things like that. But I think what it's saying here is encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, be patient with all of them. See that none of you repay evil for evil, but always seek to do good to one another and to all. Now, when it says, I think it's interesting because it talks about the weak, and then it goes right into saying, do not pay evil for evil. And I think often when we are weak, when we are hurt, when we have been victimized, it's often our nature, our human nature, to strike back. to return the bad for the bad. And one of the things that we've really done here in this community is try to encourage people to not return the favor of hurt, not return the favor of not return evil for evil, basically. You know, how do we take the higher road? How do we take the road less traveled? How do we literally embrace the idea that when Jesus says love your enemies, what that really means? And if you think about what is an enemy is someone who usually wants to hurt you. The Bible says the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So when we are often victimized by others, they are the enemy. But the Bible has a very interesting way of talking to us. Jesus has a very different way of talking to us about how we handle our enemies. The Apostle Paul has a very different way of talking about how we handle our enemies. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I would ask you guys, is Christianity the way we really want to follow? You know, is this something that we're really interested in? And you might say, no, Jay, but I'm still interested in not returning evil for evil's sake. Well, great. Let's do it. Either way. But the idea here is, you know, last week Pete talked about projection, you know, and how often we're projecting our own insecurities onto others, our own hurts onto others, our own desires onto others, and things like that. And I think we often do that with our judgment and with our pain. And so when we're hurt, we often want others to feel the pain that we're feeling by hurting them in return. And so I guess the reason this is so on my mind is often I talk, when I talk about loving enemies, when I talk about the message of grace, when I talk about those things, a lot of the pushback I get is, well, Jay, they're jerks, or I'm so hurt, or how can I love someone who victimized me, or how can I do that? And, you know, I always say, well, I'm not saying you've got to do that. You know, it's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is the Bible leads us in that direction. And so for me, it's always been one of those things where I really do firmly believe you can do it. And the reason I firmly believe you can do this type of love, where we can, in our weakness, not return evil for evil sakes, and which actually will bring us to a stronger place in our walk and in our life, in our run, in our race, is because I've struggled and I've done it. And it's taken a lot of time. And so it's not anything that happens overnight. And I think that's one thing you have to keep in perspective, is I think sometimes people come to hear talks and then hear the talk and think it's supposed to be like that. Like, here's the answers. No, you've got to put work into it. You know, like what Pete said. You know, Pete didn't just wake up one day and be like, this is what I'm going to tell you about. No, he spent 10, 15, 20 years, you know, studying this stuff to get to the point where he could communicate this with us and to talk about us with us. So it does take time. Time is part of it. You know, living life, having experiences, having community is all part of what we're talking about here. But so often, I think the reason I think we have to be sensitive to the weak, but also encourage them to be strong, is the fact is when we are constantly weak and when we are constantly victims and lashing back out at other people, not a lot gets done. And, you know, and I see it so much, and that's the weird thing with social media, is how many different types of people you see communicating their pain and their hurt. And so yesterday or the day before, I put something out about like, and then Jesus said, they'll know you by your belittling of other believers, you know, and let you know that the majority of this faith are all jerks, but you're not, you know, that kind of, I'm summing them up. I don't remember the exact tweet was, but, and I even had a humanist friend check on me and be like, dude, are you okay? I can imagine me saying this, but not you. But the idea is, I think we sell ourselves short with how much grace we're able to give and how we're able to walk. And when we sit within the weakness, our own weakness, our own hurts, our own pains, and return the hurt for hurt's sake, well, one, there's not a lot of growth. and two, we just continue to build this cycle. And and so we attack the abusers, we attack the mean people. But the reality is in life is that we're always going to be surrounded by people who are abusers. We're always going to be surrounded by people who are mean and people who are hateful. And I think one of the things the Bible does for me, and one of the things Christ does, Christ's life and Paul's teachings and different things like this have encouraged me to do, is to see how I navigate them and not allow them to cause me to give up. But I think it also comes from having good community. So, here when it talks about, on 14 it says, I think it's here, it says, help the weak, be patient with all of them. So when it says help the weak, what it's saying is it's encouraging us to help others not who are in their weakness and in their hurt and in their pain see things differently. And I feel like that's what I'm trying to do with Revolution as well, is say, what we're here for you. We understand your pain. We understand what you're going through. But we want to also help you get to a point where that's not a defined place in your life anymore. Where you're able to, we want to help you get strong. That's the idea, is like, I want to encourage you to read certain things and listen to certain things and try new things to encourage you not to live within that weakness, and to grow strong and to grow to the point where you're able to deal with the enemy, where you're able to even eventually love the enemy, where we're able to deal with mean people in a different way, and almost to a point where we're almost able to have empathy for them, and to see, in some ways, when I see angry, hurt people, you start to wonder what happened. What happened to them? What have they been through? Why are they so insecure? And then you go like, maybe they're weak. And maybe this is a defense mechanism that they've built to fight away anyone from getting to know them and know who they are. And it's the only way they feel assured in this world. The only insurance they have in this world is by being angry and by hurt and by pushing people away, and by victimizing others. The only way they ever feel power in their life is by making others feel less than. I think we've all been around people who are insecure, but they're like know-it-alls, and you just like, and you can never be right around them, but then you realize they're kind of insecure. I used to have one friend in particular who I always felt like crap being around, and then one day they just had a moment of clarity and said, I'm really insecure. I try to learn all this stuff and know all this stuff to just feel like I belong in this world, and sometimes it doesn't work, And so realizing that this was, a defense mechanism, and even they were weak, and so I had to learn to care for them. But this idea is that I want to put out there is that weak people hurt weak people. Not just hurt people, but weak people who are struggling and going through their own thing. And so the idea is that maybe we even eventually develop an empathy or a sympathy for those who have hurt us or even hurt those we love. And that's a hard one. It's one to be like, well, you hurt me, I can figure that out. But when it's like you've hurt my family or you've hurt my friends, for me, that's when I want to go fight. I don't want to get like a lot of empathy, but I'm starting to learn to see it differently, because I have fought for some of my friends who've been like, well, Jay, you got to look at it this way. And you go, oh, shoot, I'm sorry, and see it differently. Also, there's a thing too, is like when you love, and then sometimes when you love those who've hurt others, who you care about, your friends who you care about might be mad at you too. Be like, what are you doing? But what it does is it opens up an opportunity for conversation. It opens up the opportunity for thinking, for having good conversation, for just having good discussions or arguing well. To have those hard conversations that do allow growth to happen. And I speak all of this to you guys today out of my own life, out of my own pains, out of my own hurts, and out of my own weaknesses. Because, the church, I will say this, the church will turn you bitter and crush your hope if you aren't careful, if you don't remain cautious. And so often you really have to be cautious in the church. But what I've also realized is that it's not just the church that does that.
Yeah.
That it's all sorts of communities that we join. I watched tons of different communities turn within themselves, have operational problems, have issues, have disagreements, and how do we disagree well? That's the question, is how in organizations, how in communities do we learn to disagree well? And this is one community where I feel like we've really started to develop a way to disagree well. And I love that about this community. But you do have to, be careful, watch yourself, and not be crushed. But also ask yourself, does your defense mechanisms, out of your own weakness, do you start to crush others? I follow some really brilliant people, but sometimes it really makes me sad to see some of these people who are really brilliant just focus on how horrible other Christians are.
Right.
And just continuously talk about the church sucks and the church is this and the pastors are this and these people are that. I'm going like, honestly, that's why I like to call this a gathering and not a church right now, because it's just a really gross place to be because it's so divided. And even the people who I'm like, oh, these are great thinkers, are often just turning around and just pointing out the errors and the faults of each other. And everybody's just pointing out each other's faults to the point I'm like, okay, that's great. I know there's faults, but where do we go from here? Yeah. What do we do to change that? What do we do to create a better atmosphere? I don't want to just create an alternative to something. What I want to do is go in and make a difference. I want to change things. I want to see a what's the word I'm looking for?
Reformation?
A reformation. That's exactly the word I was looking for. Thank you. I want to see a reformation happen in the church. A reformation that's not us killing each other and going at war with each other, but it's us learning on how do we communicate well with each other, and how do we even agree to disagree at certain points. I'm not saying that we have to be lukewarm and get spewed from your mouth, which everybody seems to be really into right now, is lukewarm's not cool. I'm like, okay, so this group's not cool, and then the group in the middle's not cool, so only the group over here is cool. It's hard for me because I feel like we just continue to push people away and continue to push people out, but I feel like that's out of weakness. Because it really requires a lot of strength to say, we've got to sit down at the table together. We've got to have these hard conversations, and we've got to think differently. And not every battle is mine. That's another thing, is I don't have to fight every battle. I don't have to fix every person. I don't have to fix everything. But how do I live in my own life this way? And how do I communicate this with others? Now, me as a leader, I do reach out to people and try to communicate with them. You really think this is the best way to do it? You really think this person's the savior? You really think this, let's just think critically. Can we learn to think critically, but also think critically about our own actions and where we belong in that? How do we grow and not become what we despise? And that's the issue, is that I think if that was just something we kept in our toolbox, in our head, is how do I not become the very thing I despise? How do I not become a country club? How does my group not become the exclusive group, the cool kids? Because that's what a lot of us feel like. I don't want to go there anymore because they're so exclusive and they're the cool kids and I have to do this and this to fit in. So I'm going to start a group that says you can't do any of that stuff to fit into my group. And then actually you're just like, which country club do you want to join?
Right.
Which gang do you want to be a member of? And for me, that's not really how we go forward. Because the important things of like loving our neighbors as ourselves, loving our enemies, taking care of those who are suffering, taking care of the persecuted, taking care of the hurting, basically all the Beatitudes, all that stuff is not going to get done if we're all constantly at each other's throats. But you know what a great thing would be to do is how could we come together and avoid the us versus them mentality? Is that maybe we could find something that we agree with and work together on that. Like, hey, we all know how to make sandwiches and we all know how to feed homeless people. Maybe we could do that, and then afterwards we could go out and have a drink and talk about our differences there. Could you imagine if we were having difficult conversations with a lot of these, even like, I look at some of these mega churches and some of these guys that are in preachers and sneakers and all this stuff, and I'm like, Could you imagine if we could work things out with these folks who know how to lead really well and raise funds really well and do these types of things really well, and we could come to a meeting point and maybe learn to work together and help each other out? Wow, that would be kind of weird and cool. Mm-hmm. But instead, it's kind of like, no, we've got to erase that, And for me, I want to have hope for the hopeless. Like the miracles I want to see aren't people raising from the dead. The miracles I want to see is that enemies being kind to one another, people changing, people thinking differently, people taking having accountability for not just each other, not just holding you accountable, but holding themselves accountable. And how cool would that be? Yeah. So I feel that this is why leadership is important, to help bear one another's burdens and teach others how to deal with pain and how to develop strength through that pain. I'm going to go over to Peter, 1 Peter, and give me a second. I'm going to make this as fun for Caleb to edit. I have a lot of... Hopefully you can edit out that whole wrong scripture reading.
I do have the power.
Jay never makes a mistake.
Check out every single every pause. Every lip smack.
Lippy smacks, those are my favorite. 1 Peter 2:21. Let's hope that this one's right. 1 Peter 2:21. Where are you, 2:21? This is what happens when I study on my phone and not in my Bible. 1 Peter 2:21.
We start doing the PowerPoint slides.
That would be good. Okay. For to this you have been called because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example so that you should follow in his steps. He committed no sin, and detest was found in his and no dissent was found in his mouth. When he was abused, he did not return abuse. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but he entrusted himself to the one who judges justly. He himself bore no sins in his body on the cross, so that free from sin we might live for righteousness. But here, I want to go back a little bit. Let's read the important part. Where was that? 22. When he was abused, he did not return abuse. When he suffered, he did not threaten. Jesus' last words, forgive them, they know not what they do. They weren't like, I'm going to get you, or, bring down hellfire and brimstone. It was this idea that is like when people say, well, I just want to be Jesus. I'm just a Jesus. I remember I had a pastor friend who's like, I'm just a Jesus guy. Just Jesus, that's it. I was a part of a group at one time that used to be called themselves Red Letter Christians, and I was real Paulinian, so I was kind of confused by it, but still dug it. And so if you want to be just a Red Letter Christian, you just want to be Jesus, well, good luck. Is saying, when Jesus was abused, he did not return the abuse. When he suffered, he did not threaten. And so this is the thing, is like, we often get caught into the cycle of abuse, where we're abused and we abuse back, one way or the other. We get revenge. Or there's another really unhealthy way of dealing with it, is we just shut down, push it down, and we never talk about it. And it just sits there. Yep. And I think we also have to be careful of that. So I'm not just going to confront the people who are out there being angry all the time. I also want to talk to you who've maybe taken your pain and your hurt and you just pushed it away and aren't dealing with it at all. We've got to learn to deal with our pain. We have to learn to deal with it. And that's how we become stronger. But I also believe that's why the Bible says we need to help carry one another's burdens. And so you might say, well, Jay, I'm not really in a community right now where that can happen, or I'm online with you guys, and I just don't feel like that's enough of a safe space to do that. Well, I mean, honestly, if you do have insurance or something like that, I recommend therapy. But one of the reasons I went to therapy is to find someone who knew about how to deal with pain and help me carry my pain and help me deal with my pain in a positive way. I mean, that's why we go to therapy, not just to be like, oh, I just talk about shit all day, but to literally learn, how do I take this pain and create it into something else? How do I heal from it, but also become stronger so it doesn't happen to me again? And what the great thing is when you start to grasp that, then you become like this, you start to evangelize for this idea of, hey, you don't have to live in this pain all the time. Yeah, it's still going to hurt. Yeah, it's still going to be a scar. Yeah, you're going to carry these things with you. But how you can help carry other people's burdens as well. So sometimes when we're so hurt and so bitter, it's not possible. But that's when I recommend therapy. I recommend having good friends. Just to call back to Pete again, Pete was a really good friend for me through some really dark times. A few different dark times, to be honest with you. And I was grateful for that. I also had people in my friendship circle who told me, like, just give up or just do something else with your life. And I'm glad I didn't listen to a lot of them. I'd probably be stocking shelves right now rather than talking to you if I had listened to some of those folks.
You got pretty serious about your Costco fantasies there for a little bit.
Yeah, I did. And I was like 2 days away from a job at a coffee shop. Yeah, but my schedule with the kids didn't allow me to get hired. Thank goodness.
Yeah, right.
And if I have to get one of those jobs one day, that's fine. But my point is that, surrounding yourself with people who also don't let you give up, who also encourage you to be strong, who also encourage you to make the hard decisions, to go take the road less traveled, the narrow road that the Bible talks about. I used to think the narrow road was narrow because there weren't any like movie theaters and concert halls and bars and strip clubs. So it's just a really narrow road that you had to walk down because I can't lust, I can't do this. What I didn't realize is the narrow road isn't about that at all, but the narrow road was just saying, like, it's really easy just to sit and be comfortable with your pain and be bitter and be angry and live in that. Or you can take this really narrow road that's really hard to walk up, and it's going to be kind of a pain in the ass, but then you can learn to be strong and you can learn to face your pain and deal with your demons. Like the other night I was laying in bed and I just felt like every darkness come into my mind. And I was just, like, oh, my demons are here. But the fact was, as I realized that they were my demons, and I realized where they were and that they were in front of me and they weren't inside of me, where I couldn't even separate my demons from myself. Like I knew that this isn't me. This is the darkness that I deal with and I struggle with. And so I'm not going to give them a space to live in me anymore. Because it used to be that I just thought, no, you're a piece of shit. Oh, you're not good enough at this. Oh, you're not lovable. Oh, you can't be a good father. And I would think all these things and think it was me. But no, it was really this negativity. It was this listening to what others' voices were saying in my head. And now I'm realized to recognize that's just a thought. Those are just ideas. Those are just things that aren't really helpful to me. So I'm going to let them pass by. Or I'll let them sit at the edge of my bed and try to like get me to come down. But I'm like, no, I see who you are, and we can sit here and we can all be really uncomfortable, but we're not going to be one again. We're not going to do this because I'm going to take this road that kind of kicks my ass a little bit so I can love better, so I can be a better leader, so I can not only look at the person who victimized me and have love in my heart for them, but that I might able to have arguments with them and argue with them well and lead them to a place of change that hopefully leads to them not victimizing others and not growing an army of victimizers, and eventually maybe even saves themselves from being a victim as well because they've created such a graceless community. And that's my hope. I really hope that, And I've been lucky in this life to sit down with Jerry Falwell and Rick Warren and Joel Osteen and have conversations with them because I don't know how it happened. Each incident was a little bit different than the next. But I've been able to have these conversations with certain people that I thought I would never be able to even be in a room with. So you just never know what's going to come out of that and where you're going to be. And the fact is, how cool is it to stop a cycle of suffering, not just in your own life, but for others? There's a reason why, if you were sexually abused or molested, why you want to go to the police, why you want to talk about it, is one, you want to help get that person off the street so someone else doesn't get sexually abused or hurt, that's the main, hey, this happened to me. I don't want this to happen to anybody else, And I know people who were sexually abused and never talked about it and never spoke about it and were afraid that they would be blamed or afraid, because all these demons and all these things came in their mind and they were manipulated. and they were hurt. And so they never were able to say anything. And so this person was able to continue to do their victimizing as they will. Now, I'm not saying that makes that person who suffered bad. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is what are ways that we can come out of these situations and make them better? We're like kind of the Batman theory. His parents were killed, so now he's going to fight crime for the rest of his life. So nobody has to go through that. Now, not the healthiest way to do it, but the idea is not a bad idea. As how can we help protect others? But instead of beating the snot out of the bad guys, how do we allow them to see their own faults? Now, here's another thing that I find very interesting is when I was getting sober, we had to do a resentment list of all these people we resented. And man, mine was like a toilet paper roll. It was pretty long. And one of the things that my sponsor made me do was all of a sudden be like, okay, what did you have to do with that? What were your insecurities that played into why this was a situation? Now, I didn't know I was going to have to go apologize to some of these people that I thought were assholes to me. Now, this is a 12-step program, okay? I'm not trying to say this is Jesus, this is the church, but this is a 12-step program. And I'm going like, because all of a sudden I started to realize that some of these people that I thought were victimizing me, I was being victimized because of my learned behavior. I was actually manipulating certain situations so I would become a victim. And so what I had to do was I had to own my side of the street. I had to take responsibility for my own actions and my own weaknesses and my own insecurities and realize that, wow, I played a part in this. And I think that's something that we often might mislook, especially when we've been victimized. And I'm not talking about sexual victimization. I'm not trying to say, oh, you've asked for it. I'm not saying that at all, so please know that clearly. But what I'm trying to say is, in other areas of our lives, what were our roles? Like I've sat with preachers that I didn't like and read them the riot act and told them they were full of shit and, not that simply, but said things like that. And then was like, God, that guy was so mean to me. I don't understand why. Well, that's because I just told him his whole life was a joke, and I wasn't productive at all. I wasn't arguing well at all. I was just angry and wanted to tell him that he was a piece of crap. In other instances, I've had moments where we've sat down and I was able to say, like, in the past, I've felt this way because I was insecure and you said some of these things, and have the tough conversations. And that does take some time for growth. And I'm grateful for sobriety for allowing me to see the fact that I always sometimes a lot of times I play a part, my own insecurities, my own learned behaviors. Even having dyslexia as a kid in school, you think, well, that's not your fault. But what I realized is that I learned to manipulate not being a part of certain things, because I was afraid I couldn't do them. So I learned how to manipulate myself. So like if I had to read out loud at class, all of a sudden I knew where I was going to go I got to go to the bathroom, or I had just little things like these. But these learned areas of my life of how to move through so I wasn't embarrassed became other areas of my life as well. So I kind of got these coping mechanisms that weren't necessarily healthy that started to pop up into other places in my life. For example, my marriage. I've been married twice, and believe it or not, it wasn't just both their faults. I played a part in that. And a lot of that was I read this book called My Dyslexia. And it changed my life because I realized, there were some things, some learned behaviors that I brought into my marriage, that I brought into my friendships, that I brought into my leadership skills, that there were certain things that I avoided that I should have confronted right away. But because I had learned to avoid certain situations, I brought that into other areas of my life, and it really went right back to my dyslexia. So you see, it's like bad behavior doesn't always come out of an issue. Sometimes bad behavior comes out of a truth, victimless crime, but it's still because you learn your coping mechanisms ends up creating a bad behavior that hurts others, keeps others out, and also keeps you from being able to look at yourself and like, where does my part in this? Wow. So yeah, it's very interesting what we can learn about ourselves and learn about others and how we cope with pain and how we cope with hurt and how we cope with disagreements. So for a long time, I just avoided conflict, especially in my marriages, and what I've realized in my life is that's no way to live. And what that does is just create resentment, anger, and hate, and almost all serenity, almost all peace is sucked out of the room and sucked out of the relationship because you don't deal with the issues at hand. So things become bigger and different, and to the point where you don't even recognize the original issues. So we have to keep an eye on ourselves as well, and keep ourselves accountable, and ask ourselves, why did I feel that way? When I go in and I'm around the speaker and they say these things, why? I'm angry, but why am I angry? What insecurity is this kicking into? Why? Because, if I go into a church now and I hear a pastor be like, women shouldn't preach and pastors shouldn't do this and you shouldn't be divorced. I just sit there and go like, I just disagree with the guy. Yeah. But there was a time in my life where I would sit and hear this stuff and I'd be so damn angry. And I think sometimes I was angry because I was like, well, what if this guy's right? Or what if I've missed it? Or what if this is, you know what I mean? Like you just, so sometimes when you're the most angry, it's not good just to like, I'm going to lash out right away. Sit with it and go, why does this make me angry? What is this? What box is this ticking? Checking in on my list. Where are my insecurities playing in this? Where is my self-worth playing in this? Why am I feeling insecure? Because a lot of times I realize that my anger, when I let it sit to just calm down a little bit, was out of my own insecurities. Oh, yeah. And as being a drunk, being so introverted that it's crazy, I started to realize, oh, my introversion plays a part of this. My dyslexia played a part of it. My self-medicating played a part of it. Avoiding conflict played a part of it. So it was really easy for me to say, well, I can blame, like my first wife, I can blame her for this one really big bad thing that she did, and she shouldn't have done that, and she was horrible. But if I let myself calm down, relax, and think of our past together, I can see where actions in my own being, my own insecurities, slowly led to the bigger problem, to the end all, But it was through these small incidences where I played a part in those situations. So it's important to look at ourselves and be honest about who we are and not being perfect. Because to me, that's incredible. Not being, I'm not a saint, never will be. So there you go. Unless some of you put a painting of me as a saint, but just have my fingers crossed, a cigarette hanging out of my mouth. I don't smoke anymore, so just have nicotine meds. All right, I'm going to try to finish this thing because we were going way too long, which I thought was going to be really short. What about those who abuse power? Jay, what about those who are abusing power? Well, my first advice is me and Caleb were talking about this earlier. I was because some stuff came up about Mark Driscoll in the media, just again, something happening there. And we were talking about people who went to Mark Driscoll's church and how angry a lot of them were and blah, blah, blah. But how, you never heard, like, for me, I'm like, but you did make the choice to sit in a church where a pastor said women shouldn't get married and that, your penis was an extension of God's penis. You did sit
right.
and join a church that said those things. So the question is why? Mm-hmm. Why would you be a part of a community like that, the guy's an asshole, but you also joined up to be under an asshole for a long time. So the question is I'm not saying you're bad because of this. What I'm trying to say is why? Why were you there? Why were you a part of it? When I noticed, my parents fell, everybody pointed, but no one was talking about, well, I joined the community because this, or this. You have to ask yourself, right. Because sometimes we're so angry at ourselves that's why we're attacking that person, why we're attacking the leader who made the mistake or attacking the other people, because we're so angry because we felt like we got tricked, we got hoodwinked. Yeah. So the question is, why did we get hoodwinked? What is it? The fact that we see a part of ourselves in that person we're judging? Is it a part that we see a part of our own communities in the other community that we say is awful and evil? So we just point fingers at that, so we never have to confront our own faults, our own issues, that we never have to have the hard conversations with ourselves and with our own community. So we just stay focused on the enemy. Yeah. And so they just continue to rule us, and we stay at the same place. We hate them, they hate us, and we stay there. But when we look at our own selves, we can own what we want. And then we can go into someone like Driscoll's church and just go like, this guy's off base. He's missing it. And I would never join this church, Matter of fact, I would like to help people who are in a community like this get out of a community. Right. And matter of fact, if I could talk to the leader, I'd like to sit down and say to him, hey, have you ever thought about A, B, C, or D? Mm-hmm. And we can make these changes. I do believe it. I know a lot of you are thinking I'm just full of shit and I have this great, magical dream, but I believe it's reality, and I believe the work that I'm doing is more important than me. That's why I'm trying to pass it on to you guys as well, because I think we can make a difference in each other's lives. So what about those who abuse their power in leadership? Run from them. That's what my first advice is run. Get away. Leave the church. As soon as you start to realize that something's wrong, just get out of there. I mean, there are so many communities and so many different people you can be a part of their lives. You know, you can ask people to coffee. You don't have to go to church with them. Take time to look at the situation and yourself. As I already said, take a good look at yourself as well and see why you're part of it. See what part you played and may have needed in that dynamic. I'm sorry, I'm just reading my notes. You know, and you can always, you know, one of the ways is if you see what your part was, and if you did realize you played a part, you can go make amends to them. And you'll never believe it, but man, sometimes just making amends to somebody helps them all of a sudden look at their own side. Like, oh yeah, well, you know what, you know, like going back to a teacher and saying, hey, you know, I did this and I treated you this way when I was a kid, and I'm really sorry that I did that. You know what? And my teacher comes back and goes, you know what, though, you were a teenager and you're going through that. And I was overwhelmed because I had a bunch of teenagers of just like you who were all going through the same thing, and sometimes they didn't handle it that well. And you go, oh, wow, you know, we're both kind of owning our side of the street. This is really interesting. So a lot of coolness comes out of us just even making amends for, even if our part's not the biggest part, we just still like, I'm going to ask for forgiveness because I did play a little part in this. And, you know, sometimes you end up seeing that person come to a realization of their own faults, their own shortcomings. But you know what? I also believe that the other can piss us off, but we can also work on our capacity to love from afar as well. We don't have to always love and be up in their business. That's why I said you got to take time and focus on yourself and look at your own side of the street. And you might just say, like, this is a bit beyond my pay raise. And I have a lot of my pay raise, my pay grade, you know, and it might be, you know, like, I don't think I'm going to sit down with any of the like presidents or any of these huge top politicians and have conversations with them. So I kind of just have to back off and say, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I believe. And I don't want to see this happen, but I'm not able to go right directly into it. So I'm going to work on my level and stay in my pay grade, stay in my lane, bro, and work out, live life on life's terms. So sometimes you have to live life on life's terms, and you just have to go away and do your own thing and accept yourself and allow yourself to become better, you know, and then maybe you'll be in a situation, or you'll know somebody who's in that situation that you'll be able to help. So my main thing out of this is what some of us who are most vocal and screaming the loudest about isn't working. And some people who I love, sometimes it's not even just them, it's the things that they repeat or that they tell me about or stories they share on social media. They just discourage me so much because it's just, so many discouraging things that don't help. So sometimes I think we have to ask ourselves, is this helping, or am I just stoking the fire? You know, am I just stoking the war? You know, am I just helping people get more ammunition to use to fight? You know, or am I being a peacemaker? Because the Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers. And the reason is the peacemakers are taking the road less traveled. You know, they're avoiding the pot shots. They're avoiding the pettiness. You know, can I be a peacemaker? But it requires a lot. It requires a lot to love your enemies as well. I think that's the hard thing is we see those verses as these little like, ooh, aren't they cute and fuzzy and just throwaway? But they're not. They're intense and they're tough and they're hard. You know, sometimes I hear people say like, oh, people only share the easy quotes of MLK. You know, oh, those are the just easy quotes. Why don't you talk about like him being against the Vietnam War and things like that? I'm like, yeah, those are tough quotes. But if you took those quotes where we're talking about, you know, loving your enemy, or, you know, not being silent in a time when it's not convenient, or not letting someone pull you down far enough to hate, you know, if you really take those easy quotes to heart, they're not easy quotes. They're mountains. They're mountains that we have to climb, and we need to do it together. And that's why we have to carry one another's burden. So those love quotes aren't always really easy quotes. We just have to become so desensitized to them that we think, oh, that's warm and fuzzy. No, it's harder. It's harder to shut up sometimes. It's harder to be silent sometimes and wait for the right timing. I'm not saying be silent, but I'm saying waiting for the right moment.
Right.
Waiting to be when you are prepared to face the demons. Waiting to be prepared when you're willing to sit down with your enemy or with your abuser or with those who cause us to be victims, with our enemies. Sometimes it's knowing self-growth. It's knowing when to say, like, I read a lot, so sometimes people are like, oh, you're very quiet. Why are you so silent, Jay? Your silenceness is deafening, and you get like, I'm working on it because I want to say the right thing, because I want to make sure that when I enter the conversation, I have something to add, that I'm not just another voice, and I'm not just some voice crying in the wilderness, but I'm a voice that like, blessed are the feet that bring the good news. That I'm that voice, that I'm bringing something productive to the table. And because everybody's pissed off, we all know these people are jerks. I'm not going to just come in and just bring that, bring the same old information. I want to bring something that's going to be positive. Like, how do we stop them from being jerks? How do we make a difference here? When I say people say I could never forgive them, it does break my heart, because one of the things I want to do is help you forgive those who've hurt you. When I was younger, I was sexually abused, okay? And the reason I say that is because that's a lot of the people come on here and say, well, Jay, you don't understand. And I want to let you know, I've been in dark, dark places, not just the fall of Jim and Tammy. I've been in dark places and had to confront that kind of stuff. So what I want to say is, don't sell yourself short, because I don't think it's weak to say I could never forgive them. I think that's an honest statement, and that's okay. But what I want to say is just leave out never. Just say, I can't forgive them now. I can't deal with it at this point. I can't see it in the foreseeable future. Don't sell yourself short, because you're stronger than you think, and you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. And I'm not trying to be like, this is a self-help motivational talk. But honestly, I'm just trying to say this is a talk that I've learned to live, and I've learned to live through reading the Bible, through having Pete Rollins as a friend, through reading Hegel, through reading Martin Luther King Jr., through having other friendships and relationships with people, by going through really dark times, by destroying and being part of 2 marriages that didn't work. I've learned these in the situations to live life on life's terms. Honestly, I could just get rid of the whole spiritual aspect of this Bible and just say, there's things in this Bible that will end up being practical in my life, And that's why I'm sharing it with you today. I'm not trying to say this is any supernatural thing, but it's something that some others may call miracles, and something you may call a miracle in your life because you never thought that you would have the strength to do that. And what I'm willing to say is, I'm willing to bet that you do. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but it might be somewhere down the future that you find the strength in yourself to do something that is bigger than yourself. And I believe we all are capable of doing that. So I think it's tough for me, because as a teacher, that is my hope for you. That you're able to face your fears and find peace through hard work. And that you can help stop the cycle of abuse in your own life and in others' lives. I mean, that's my hope. And I'm going to end with James. James. The book of James. My favorite book in the Bible. That's a joke. Oh, James, here you are. The Epistle of Straw, as Martin Luther liked to call.
Is that what he called it?
Yeah, he hated the book of James.
Epistle of Straw.
He hated it. He wanted it taken out of the canon. James 1:2 says, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy. Now, this is a hard one to grasp.
Count it as joy.
Count it as joy. Because you know that testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking in nothing. And so I think James is onto something here. Like the whole idea of faith without works is dead, because our works, maybe not to us, but to others, it becomes dead. So I think what James is saying is allow the pain and the suffering to find a way to be productive. You know, it's like using every part of the animal. You know, it's like we're going to eat everything. We're going to use the leather. We're going to use the hoofs and make Jello. You know, cow butthole soup is my favorite. But the fact is like we're going to use everything we can and make it better. And so it's saying, you know, so when you go through suffering, and now I'm able to see this. What James is saying is that when I do go through it, I'm not stoked to go through it. And I'm not like, oh, this is, I'm joyful. But I do know that there's a lesson to be learned. That I do know there's going to be something greater than myself happen. So I want to see you be strong. I want to see you be able to find strength in suffering. And I'm not saying like bro strength, like man strength, like we're going to go wrestle in the mud. But I'm saying a beautiful strength of self-healing and healing of others and stopping vicious cycles. Two, the fact is that no one cares. And that's good news and bad news. Now, I'm not going to say no one completely cares, but most people don't care, and most people are dealing with their own stuff. And learning that kind of helps grow too. So there you go. That's my talk today. I hope we can all find some strength in that. We're going to open it up for Q&A. You know what, Caleb? I'm going to do something I've never done before, and I'm going to get up and use the restroom and let you look at some questions and maybe even have your own.
Okay, cool. Alrighty. I guess I'll maybe just share something that Steve shared on here. Steve shared a verse, 2 Corinthians 12:9 here in the chat. Said, I love the verse, God's grace is made perfect in our weakness. That's really good. That's really deep. There's a lot of philosophy in that probably. God's grace is made perfect in our weakness. I guess that kind of points to the fact that the grace is played out because of our weakness, I suppose. That we engage in grace because we engage in sin. You know, without sin, there's no need for grace, and so it's played out and perfected, and maybe we see how it can fit into different molds. We see how it can adapt and react to different situations, and by applying grace to different situations and experiencing it in 3 dimensions. Oh, hey, Jay.
Hey! I just walked away to do a little prayer. Sorry, everybody. Look,
I thought I felt the temperature of the room change. The spirit is now among us.
the coffee was a little bit large for Sunday morning.
All right, Jay. Well, just a couple of comments here we can look at. I believe Jason or Jason said, we have to be open to growth and having those hard conversations that we've struggled so hard to push deep down. And he mentioned that before you had mentioned about when we don't confront weakness and we just keep kind of compressing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And then Steve said something very sweet. Steve said, you are a great role model for us. Thank you for sharing so clearly about your own weaknesses and how you transform them into strengths.
Oh, thanks, man.
And then also said, great preaching, Jay. Thanks. Coming from a preacher like Steve, that's a high praise.
Is very high praise. Thank you, sir.
Praise. Beth said, beautiful message as always. Love you both. Thanks, Beth. That's very sweet. Kate also sends love. Yeah, just a lot of nice positive feedback. Roberta said, avoid us versus them.
Yep.
Miguel said that he missed us last week. And Greg liked what you were saying about believers belittling each other. They'll know you by how you belittle each other.
Yes. By your belittling of one another. So belittle one another. Is that it?
That's about it.
Wow. Well, thanks, everybody. That was nice. I expected a little more kickback today. So I'm glad. Present surprise. Now that I've got to go drive over to the shot factory.
That's right. Get a little mini COVID experience.
So the funniest thing about Pete's talk last week and the comments that I read was somebody said, I really hope that all of a sudden Caleb just walks into the background and sits on the couch. Which now, had I thought about that, would have been an expensive joke, but it would have been good. But Caleb helped get that thing together because it was really a pain to get us all that stuff worked out and get it on Facebook. We're really trying to get this video stuff put together. Hey, one more thing, everybody. as I mentioned before, but we have a few more listeners. Please check out Wake. We pinned up the comment on the top, link to PeteRollins.com to check out Wake. I can't recommend. I know that $55 can be a lot of money, but it's 9 hours of like really amazing information, really amazing entertainment, but also really just it's a great. Pete Rollins is a great person to learn from. And like I said, if you enjoy what you hear here at Revolution, I can just say that my years of friendship and the past couple of years, especially of Revolution, have really been inspired by Pete Rollins' work. And I can't recommend it enough, and I'd say it's the best $55 you could spend. You know, like, I don't usually tell people to go do that kind of thing, but I really can't recommend Wake enough. It really played a huge part in my life, getting back on my feet after a really dark, tough time. And so please sign up for it. And matter of fact, if you're part of a church, let your church know about Wake. You know, let people in the church know about it. Check out, if you know pastors and people in leadership, man, I just can say it's undoubtedly would be an amazing tool for them to be a part of that. And the great thing is, you know, you're not having to sit there and read a long book. You're able to just sit there and listen and take notes, and you can go back and listen again. Please recommend that to your friends and folks around you. I really wish I could get every church in the country to make their pastors go to Wake. But I wish also every person would go to Wake, because I'm so grateful for for what it taught me and being able to be a part of such a really cool thing. And it's going to be live from Northern Ireland and Belfast. So you're just going to hear from a lot of great people that we don't always get a chance to hear from. So please check out Wake. I'm not there. I want to be there. I was supposed to be flying out there tomorrow, but the UK was not open to to people from the States traveling there, so we're not going to be there. So thank you so much. Hey, if you like what you hear, feel free to go to revolutionchurch.com/donations and make a donation and help us continue to do this work. Thanks a lot, folks. Have a great week, and we will see you soon. See you soon, Teresa.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. To make your 100% tax-deductible donation today, please visit revolutionchurch.com/donate. You can also learn more by clicking the donate section on the website.